So I'm going to give the panel members an opportunity to respond to a question posed by Justice Sotomayor during the oral arguments on the birthright citizenship bill. And she said, I'm paraphrasing, imagine a new president takes office and decides, because of the epidemic of gun violence in our country, to issue an executive order announcing that he will deploy the military to seize the guns of every gun owner across the country. That executive order would be swiftly challenged in a federal district court, or more likely in several district courts. Should a district court be allowed to issue a nationwide injunction to at least temporarily prevent the enforcement of that executive order? I'd like each of you to respond. Professor Blackman.
I actually addressed that point in the blog post. We actually have history of someone in this country disarming everyone. His name was General Gage, and that was not fought with Rule 23.
So your answer?
I don't. If the president came to take everyone's gun in this country, I don't think the remedy would be in the courts.
Professor Shaw?
Yes, I mean, I think that whatever the constitutional right is, whether it's a Second Amendment, a First Amendment, a due process right, if a president tries to do something that is in clear violation of settled law, whether we like the law or not, that an injunction is an appropriate remedy.
Professor Alessia?
No, Senator. I've written in support of the Second Amendment in many fora, but I don't think that a judge could issue a universal injunction under those circumstances. Of course, the challengers could seek certification under Rule 23 and then try to pursue class-wide relief.
So do you think it's reasonable to expect every single person affected by an executive order like the one I described to seek relief through Rule 23, or to file their own lawsuit to seek relief?
I don't think that would be necessary, Senator. If you had one person who sought class certification successfully, that would be sufficient. But even if you had failures to class certification, once you get to the Supreme Court and the Supreme Court issues a binding decision, that precedent would bind all the lower courts. So it's not a question of whether you get to a uniform rule, it's just a question of when you get to a uniform rule and by what route. But those limitations on the route matter under Article 3.
There's been a lot said during the course of this hearing about the possibility or likelihood that judges are being selected for this process to review the decisions of the Trump administration on a political basis. Professor Shaw, I noted, I'm not sure you read this into the record, but you said according to a recent analysis by Professor Bonica, the Trump administration has lost 80.4% of the time before district judges appointed by Democratic presidents, 80.4 Democrats, 72.2 before district judges appointed by Republican presidents. Who is Professor Bonica?
He's a political scientist at Stanford, and so that's in my written statement. And I think it does suggest that it cannot be reasonably just attributed to policy antipathy. This is about a pretty broad consensus about the lawlessness of many of the administration's actions, and I think both Democratic and Republican appointees have seen that.
That's my impression as well. This is not a stacked deck, a statistical impossibility. It is a fact. This president has issued more orders with more controversy than any president in recent memory. I've only been to Amarillo once when I was a younger person. I'm sure it's a lovely city, but it turns out that the Amarillo division of the Northern District of Texas has gotten quite a bit of publicity. It turns out that there are people have been filing lawsuits there because there's only one judge who sits in that division. Judge Matthew Kaczmarek, who I remember appeared before the committee. Litigants knew Judge Kaczmarek would be assigned to their cases and viewed him as favorable to their arguments. So the argument that's being made that venues shopping, forum shopping, is on one side of the table. It is clearly on both sides of the table, and Judge Kaczmarek is pretty well known for the way he rules. Professor Shaw, do you have any observation on that?
Yeah, I mean, as I said in response to Senator Welch, I actually think that those single judge divisions, like the one in Amarillo, Texas, where Judge Kaczmarek sits, are a genuine problem. But none of the injunctions against the Trump administration have issued from judges who sit in those single member districts. So I'm not even sure it's fair to say that that's a problem we are seeing now and we saw previously. We actually aren't seeing it now. But I do think that regardless of who the president is, these single judge divisions are a problem that Congress would be well served to address.
Thank you very much. Thank you.